Okay, I think it's part 6, maybe. And I think hopefully this will be the last part. The next part is called Temples and Freemasonry. Um, this is a quote from October 15th, 1911, a message from the first presidency. Quote, because of their Masonic characters, the ceremonies of the temple are sacred and not for the public. 1. Just 7 weeks after Joseph's March 1842 Masonic initiation, Joseph introduced the LDS endowment ceremony in May of 1842. So it was March and then May. 2. President Herbert C. Kimball, a Mason himself and a member of the first presidency for 21 years, made the following statement, quote, we have the true Masonry. The Masonry of today is received from the apostasy which took place in the days of Solomon and David. They have now and then a thing that is correct, but we also have the same thing, end quote. 3. Masonry had the if masonry had the original temple ceremony but became distorted over time, why doesn't the LDS ceremony more closely resemble an earlier form in masonry, which would be more correct rather than the exact version that Joseph Smith was exposed to in his March 1842 Navajo, Illinois initiation? 4. Freemasonry has zero links to Solomon's temple, although more a church folklore with origins from comments made by early Mormon Masons, such as Herbert C. Kimball, than being church doctrine. It's a myth that the endowment ceremony has its origins from Solomon's temple, or that the Freemasonry passed down parts of the endowment over the centuries from Solomon's temple. Solomon's temple was all about animal sacrifice. Freemasonry has its origins to stone tradesmen in medieval Europe, not in 950 BC Jerusalem. Fair Mormon admits these facts. Quote, unfortunately, there is no historical evidence to support a continuous functioning line from Solomon's temple to the present. We know that what went on in Solomon's temple, it's the ritualistic slaughter of animals. Another quote was, Masonry, while claiming a root in antiquity, can only be reliably traced to medieval stone tradesmen. It is clear that Freemasonry and its traditions play a role in the development of the endowment ritual. If there's, end quote. So, if there's no connection to Solomon's temple, what's so fine about a man-made medieval European secret fraternity and its rituals? Number 5. Why did the church remove the blood oath penalties and the 5 points of fellowship at the veil from the endowment ceremony in the 1990s? Both of these were 100% Masonic rituals. What does it say about the temple and the endowment ceremony if 100% pagan 100% pagan Masonic rituals were in it from its inception? What does it say about the church if it removed something that Joseph Smith had said he restored and which would never again be taken away from the earth? 6. Is God really going to require individuals to know secret tokens, handshakes, and signs to get into heaven? What is the purpose of them? Doesn't Heavenly Father know our names and know us personally? Indeed, aren't our very hairs on our head numbered? And couldn't those who have left the church and still know the secret tokens, handshakes, and signs for those who have watched the endowment ceremony on YouTube benefit from that knowledge? 7. Does the eternal salvation, eternal happiness, and eternal families really depend on Masonic rituals and multi-million-dollar castles? Is God really going to separate good couples and their children from who love one another from those who want to be together in the next life because they object to uncomfortable and strange Masonic temple rituals, and a polygamous heaven. So this is a quote from the LDS Temple Endowment, quote called the 5 Points of Fellowship. It was removed in 1990. So it's from this guy named Peter, and the quote is: "The 5 points of fellowship are inside of right foot, by the side of right foot, knee to knee, breast to breast, hand to back, and mouth to ear." And then there's a picture of it on here too. And that's the LDS Temple Endowment. And then another direct quote thing is from the Masonic 5 Points of Fellowship from the 3rd degree Master Masonic Ritual. And it's called, and he says, "The 5 points of fellowship are foot to foot, knee to knee, breast to breast, hand to back, and cheek to cheek, or mouth to ear." So same thing. Okay. I think this is one of the last sections, and this is science. So a quote from Henry Eyring, Faith of a Scientist. He says, "Since the gospel embraces all truth, there can never be any genuine contradictions between true science and true religion. I am obliged, as a Latter-day Saint, to believe whatever is true regardless of source." Another quote is from 2017, the LDS Bible Dictionary topic of death. Quote, "Latter-day Revelation teaches that there was no death on this earth before the fall of Adam. Indeed, death entered the world as a direct result of the fall." And then it says the fall of Adam took place in 4000 BC. And then a quote from National Geographic, Mass Extinctions, is that more than 90% of all organisms that have ever lived on Earth are extinct. At least a handful of times in the last 500 million years, 50 to more than 90% of all species on Earth have disappeared in a geological blink of an eye. The problem Mormonism encounters is that so many of its claims are well within the realm of scientific study and as such can be proven or disproven. To cling to the faith in these areas where the overwhelming evidence is against it is willful ignorance, not spiritual dedication. Number 1, 2 Nephi chapter 2 verses 22 and Alma chapter 12 verses 23 and 24 state there was no death of any kind, humans, all animals, birds, fish, dinosaurs, etc., on this earth until the quote the fall of Adam, which according to the Doctrine and Covenants 77 verses 6 and 7 occurred about 7,000 years ago. It is scientifically established that there has been life and death on this planet for billions of years. How does the church reconcile this? How do we explain the massive fossil evidence showing not only animal deaths, but also the extinctions of over a dozen different hominin species over the span of 250,000 years prior to Adam? 2. If Adam and Eve are the first humans, how do we explain the dozen or so hominin species who lived and died 35,000 to 2.4 million years before Adam? When did those guys stop being human? 3. Genetic science and testing has advanced scientifically the past few decades. I was surprised to learn from results of my own genetic test that 1.6 of my DNA is Neanderthal. How does this fact fit with Mormon theology and doctrine that I am a literal descendant of a literal Adam and Eve from about 7,000 years ago? Where do the Neanderthals fit in? How do I have Adamic How do I have pre-Adamic Neanderthal DNA and Neanderthal blood circulating my veins when this species died off about 33,000 years ago before Adam and Eve? 4. Other events and claims that science has decredited. Tower of Babel, a staple story of the Jaredites in the Book of Mormon, the global flood, um, 4,500 years ago, Noah's Ark, humans and animals having their origin from Noah's family and animals contained in the ark 4,500 years ago. It is scientifically impossible, for example, for a bear to have evolved into several species, sun bear, polar bear, grizzly bear, etc., from common ancestors from Noah's time just a few thousand years ago. There are hosts of other impossibilities associated with Noah's Ark stories claim. And then this is claimed other. A quote from Richard Bushman. He says the dominant narrative is not true. It can't be sustained. These concerns are secondary to all of the above. These concerns do not matter if the foundational truth claims, Book of Mormon, First Vision, Prophets, Book of Abraham, Witness, Priesthood, Temporals, etc. are not true. So, number 1. Church's dishonesty, censorship, and whitewashing over its histories. Adding to the above deceptions and dishonesty over history, rock and hat translation, polygamy, polyandry, multiple First Vision accounts, etc. The following bother me. 2013 official declaration to header update dishonesty. Offending text. Quote, early in its history, church leaders stopped conferring the priesthood on black males of African descent. Church records offer no clear insight into the origins of this practice. This, in sharp contrast to the above statement, was from the first presidency given. The first presidency gave a statement in 1949, August 17th, saying that attitude of the church with reference to I'm just going to read what it says. The attitude of the church with reference to Negroes remains as it has always stood. It is not a matter of the declaration of a policy, but a direct commandment from the Lord, on which is founded the doctrine of the church from the days of its organization, to the effect that Negroes may become members of the church, that they are not entitled to the priesthood at the present time. I'm gonna say vocabulary, words, how people phrase things also has a lot to do with racism and white supremacy. So choose your words wisely, but also like entitled. They're not entitled to the priesthood at these times. Okay, continuing. The prophets of the Lord have made several statements as to the operations of the principle. President Brigham Young said, "Why are there so many inhabitants of the earth cursed with a skin of blackness? It comes in consequence of their fathers rejecting the power of the holy priesthood and the law of God. They will go down to death. And when all the rest of the children have received their blessings in the holy priesthood, then that curse will be removed from the seed of Cain, and they will be then come up and possess the priesthood and receive all blessings which now we are entitled to." President Wilford Woodruff made the following statement. President Wilford Woodruff whatever the fuck, made the following statement: "The day will come when all that race will be redeemed and possess all the blessings which we now have." The position of the church, the position of the church regarding the Negro may be understood when another doctrine of the church is kept in mind, namely, that the conduct of spirits in the premortal existence has some determining effect upon the conditions and circumstances under which these spirits take on mortality, and that while the details of this principle have not been made known, the mortality is a privilege that is given to those who maintain their first estate, and that worth and that the worth of the privilege is so great that spirits are willing to come to the earth and take on bodies, no matter what the handicap may be as to the kind of bodies they are to secure, and that among the handicaps, failure of the right to enjoy mortality, the blessings of the priesthood, is a handicap which spirits are willingly to assume in order that might they come to earth. Under this principle, there is no injustice whatsoever involved in this deprivation as to the holding of the priesthood by the Negroes. End quote. The First Presidency. Sounds like a bunch of fucking bullshit to me. Okay. I need more water. So, along with the above First President's statement that I just read, there are many other statements and explanations made by the prophets and apostles clearly justifying the church's racism. So, the 2013 edition Official Declaration 2 header in the scriptures is not only misleading, it's dishonest. We do have records, including from the First Presidency itself, with very clear insights on the origins on the ban of the blacks. Update: The church released a race in the priesthood essay, which contradicts their 2013 Official Declaration 2 header. In the essay, they point to Brigham Young as the originator of the band. Furthermore, they effectively throw 10 Latter-day Prophet seers and revelators under the bus that they disavow the theories that these 10 men taught and justified for 130 years as doctrine and revelation for the church's institutional and theological racism. Heavy shit, okay? Sorry, I'm trying to put this in. Finally, they denounce the idea that God punishes individuals with black skin or that God withholds blessings based on the color of one's skin, while completely ignoring the contradiction of the Keystone Book of Mormon teaching exactly this. And like this is towards the end of it, so I'm just trying to see if there's anything. Okay, so we're gonna just some excerpts here that I think are important. This is about a lady called Zena Diantha Huntington Young. She was married for 7.5 months and was about 6 months pregnant with her first husband, Henry Jacobs, when she married Joseph Smith after being told Joseph's life was in danger from an angel with a drawn sword, like if manipulation. And then after Joseph Smith's death, Zena married Brigham Young and had a child with him while she was still married legally to Henry Jacobs. Brigham sent Henry on missions while being married to Zena. Zena would eventually become the third General Relief Society president of the church. Zena's whitewashed biographical page on the LDS.org website. In the marriage and family section, it does not list Joseph Smith as a husband or concurrent husband with Henry Jacobs. In the marriage and family section, it does not list Brigham Young as a concurrent husband with Henry Jacobs either. There is nothing in there about the polyandry, and it is deceptive in stating that Henry and Zena did not remain together while omitting that Henry separated only after Brigham Young took his wife and told Henry that Zena was now only Brigham, his wife. Zena's index file on LDS-owned-family-search.org, it clearly shows all of Zena's husbands, including her marriage to Joseph Smith. Why is Joseph Smith not listed as one of Zena's husbands in the marriage and family section or anywhere else on her biographical page on the LDS.org website? Why is there not a single mention or hint of polyandry on her page, or that in the marriage section where she was married to 2 Latter-day Prophets and having children with Brigham Young while still being married to her first husband, Henry? So, the Brigham Young Sunday School Manual. In the church's Sunday School Manual, Teachings of the Presidents of the Church, Brigham Young, the church changed the word wives to wife. Plural, singular. Not only is the manual deceptive in disclosing whether or not Brigham Young was a polygamist, but it's deceptive in hiding Brigham Young's real teaching on marriage. Quote, the only men who become gods, even the son of gods, are those who enter in polygamy. Censorship. Jesus. In November 2013, church historian Elder Stephen E. Snow acknowledged the church's censorship and pointed to the advent of the internet as the contributing factor to the church's inability to continue its pattern of hiding information and records from its members and investigators. Quote, I think in the past there was a tendency to keep a lot of records closed, or at least not give access to information. But the world has changed in the last generation. With the access of information on the internet, we can't continue that pattern. I think we need to continue to be more open. 2. Church finances. There is zero transparency to the members of the church. Why is the one and only true church keeping its books in the dark? Why would God's one true church choose to, quote, keep them in the darkness over such a stewardship? History has shown time and again that secret religious wealth is a breeding ground for corruption. The church used to be transparent with its finances, but ceased disclosures in 1959. Estimated 1.5 billion luxury mega mall City Creek Center. Total church humanitarian aid from 1985 to 2011, $1.4 billion. Something is fundamentally wrong with the, quote, one true church spending more than an estimated $1.5 billion high-end mega mall than in its 26 years of humanitarian aid. For an organization that claims to be Christ's one true church, this expenditure is a moral failure on so many different levels. For a church that asks its members to sacrifice greatly for temple building, such as the case of Argentinians giving the church gold from their dental work, indigenous Argentinians taking gold out of their mouth that they needed for the church, for the temple. Okay. And then for the Sao Paulo, Brazil temple, this mall business is absolutely shameful. All of the things that Christ would tell his prophet, the prophet buys a mall and says, let's go shopping. Of all the sum total of human suffering and poverty on this planet, the inspiration the brethren feel for his church is to get into the declining high-end shopping mall business. Okay. President Hinckley's dishonest interview. President Hinckley made the following dishonest statement in a 2002 interview to a German reporter. The reporter, in my country, we say that people's churches, the Protestants, Catholics, they publish all their budgets to all the public. Hinckley says, yeah. The reporter says the reporter says, why is it impossible for your church? And President Hinckley says, well, we simply think that the information belongs to those who made the contribution and not to the world. That's the only thing. Yes. End quote. Where can I see the church's books? I have paid tithing. Where can I go to see what the church's finances are? ? Where can current tithing paying members go to see the books? They answer, we can't. Even if you've made the contribution as President Hinckley stated above, unless you're authorized general authority or senior church employee in the accounting department with the non-disclosure agreement, you are out of luck. President Hinckley knew this and for whatever reason made a dishonest statement. Tithing before rent, water, electricity, and feeding your family. Look up the definitions of cult again and see. Okay, I'm going to say it one more time and then I'm going to move on. Tithing before rent, water, electricity, and feeding your family. I find the following quote in the December 2012, not long time ago, 2012 Ensign, very disturbing. Quote, if paying tithing means that you can't pay for water or electricity, pay tithing. If paying tithing means that you can't pay your rent, pay tithing. If paying tithing means that you don't have enough money to feed your family, pay tithing. The Lord will not abandon you. End quote. This despicable, dangerous idea of tithing before feeding your family was further perpetrated in the April 2017 General Conference by Elder Jackie. Can you please stop, Jackie? April 2017 General Conference by Elder Valerie Cordon. Quote, one day during those difficult times, I heard my parents discussing whether they should pay tithing or buy food for their children. On Sunday, I followed my father to see what was he going to do. After our church meeting, I saw him take an envelope and put his tithing in. That was the only part of the lesson. The question that remained for me was what we were going to eat. Would a loving, kind, and empathetic God really place parents in a horrible position of having to choose whether to feed their children or pay what little they have to a multi-billion luxury, mega mall owning church that receives an estimated, oh my God, $8 billion $8 billion in annual tithing receipts. It's a lot of zeros there. Oh, and a lot of this stuff is highlighted with like hyperlinks and sources, just not just saying shit. So a lot of this has stuff like that. Quote, well, God tested Abraham by asking him to sacrifice his son, and besides, the Lord will take care of them through the bishop's storehouse. End quote. Yes, the same God who tested Abraham is also the same capricious God. Jackie, I'm not in the mood. No, Jackie. She knows. Yes, the same God who tested Abraham is also the very capricious God who killed innocent babies and endorsed genocide, slavery, and rape. The claims, counsels, and directives of these general authorities, compensated with an annual 6-figure church salary, to prioritize money before the needs, health, and well-being of children, is hypocritical and morally reprehensible. Besides, whatever happened to self-sufficiency? Begging the bishop for food when you had the money for food, but because you followed the above counsel and gave your food money to the church, you're now dependent on the church for food money? And if you give your food and rent to the church, you are now not self-reliant, you are church-reliant? Dishonesty altering Lorenzo Snow's words and teachings on tithing. The church took the prophet Lorenzo Snow's 1899 General Conference address words and deliberately omitted and replaced key words on tithing with ellipses in the teachings of the president of the church, Lorenzo Snow Manual. So this is what he said in his 1899 General Conference address. I plead with you in the name of the Lord, and I pray that every man, woman, and child who has means shall pay 1/10 of their income as tithing. Okay, compare this to how the church uses and presents Snow's exact same quote today in its teachings of presidents of the church, Lorenzo Snow Manual. So, same manual, updated thing. I plead with you in the name of the Lord, and I pray that every man, woman, and child shall pay 1/10 of their income as tithing. So they took out the thing, who has means, if you're able to. The church's dishonesty alters and completely changes Lorenzo Snow's words and teachings by... I just said that. In 2012, a Latter-day Saint published an eye-opening blog post that went viral among the internet Mormons. Quote, are we paying too much tithing? This article demonstrates how what is currently taught and practiced is contrary to how it was taught and practiced by the prophet Joseph Smith and subsequent prophets, including Lorenzo Snow, whose above quote was deceptively altered and manipulated for today's tithe-paying members. 2. Name of the church. 1. In 1830, the name was Church of Jesus Christ. 1834, the Church of Latter-day Saints. 1838, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. After revealing Church of Jesus Christ on April 6, 1830, Joseph Smith made the decision on May 3, 1834 to change the name of the church to the Church of Latter-day Saints of the Church of Latter-day Saints. Why did Joseph Smith take the name Jesus Christ out of the very name of his restored church? Capital H. The only one and true church on the face of the earth in which Christ is the head. Weird. 4 years later, on April 26, 1838, the church's name was changed to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and has remained ever since. Except for the hyphen, which was added to be grammatically correct. That was added later. Is it reasonable to assume that God would periodically change the name of his church? If Jesus Christ is the central character of God's religion on earth, and all things are to be done in his name, is it reasonable to assume that God would construct his church leaders to entirely leave out the name of Jesus Christ from the period of May 3rd, 1834 to April 26th of 1838? What possible reason could there be for the name changes? Why would Christ instruct Joseph to change the one thing in 1830 and then change it in 1834 and then change it again in 1838? Why would the name of Christ be dropped from his one and only church for 4 whole years? What does this say about a church that claims to be restored and guided by modern revelation? 3. Anti-intellectualism. Stay-at-home moms. Sorry. Okay. Quote, some things that are true are not very useful. Elder Boyd K. Packer gave a talk to church educational system instructors and faculty at a CES symposium on August 22nd, 1981, entitled, "The Mantle is Far, Far Greater Than Its Intellect." Elder Packer said the following: there is a temptation for the writer or the teacher of church history to want to tell everything, whether it is worthy of faith promoting or not. Some things that are true are not very useful. That's so... Think about it. I thought about it before. Lots of times. You think about it now. Elder Dallin H. Oaks, best friends with that Hoffman guy, the murderer and known con man. The best friends and the murderer the church gave money to. Okay, yeah, him. Elder Dallin H. Oaks made similar comment to the context of church history at a CES symposium on August 16th, 1985. The fact that something is true is not always a justification for communicating it. Joseph using a rock and a hat instead of the gold plates to translate the Book of Mormon is not a useful truth. Okay. The fact that there are multiple conflicting first vision accounts is not useful truth. The fact that Joseph Smith was involved in polyandry while hiding it from Emma. Damn, when in Doctrine and Covenants 132 verse 16 condemns it as adultery? That's not a useful truth? Okay. Elder Packer continues. That historian or scholar who delights in pointing out the weaknesses and fragilities of present or past leaders destroys faith. A destroyer of faith, particularly one with the church, and more particularly one who is employed specifically to build faith, places him in great spiritual jeopardy, end quote. So, if facts and truths can destroy faith, what does that say about faith? And your faith specifically? If prophets of the church conducted themselves in such a way that it can destroy faith, what does that say about the prophets? What's interesting about Elder Packard's quote is that he's focusing on history more from the point of view that a historian is only interested in the weaknesses and fatalities of present and past leaders, which is not true. Historians are also interested in things like how the Book of Mormon got translated, or how many accounts Joseph gave about the foundational first vision, or whether the Book of Abraham even matches the papyri in pictures. Besides, it matters if the religious texts, which past and present leaders' weaknesses and fatalities are. If Joseph's public position was that adultery and polygamy are morally wrong and condemned by God, what does it say about him and his character that he did not, while he did exactly that in the dark while lying to Emma and everyone else about it? How is this not a useful truth? A revealed hypothetical example to further illustrate this point. the prophet or one of the apostles gets caught with child pornography on his hard drive. This matters, especially in the light of his current position, status, and teachings on mortality. Just because a leader wears a religious hat does not follow that they're exempt from history and accountability from others, nor their followers. Furthermore, testimonies are acquired in part by the recitation or the repeating of historical narrative. I don't know. Missionaries recite the narrative about Joseph Smith searching and praying for answers, about acquiring the gold plates and translating the Book of Mormon, about the priesthood being restored along other foundational narratives. So why should investigators and members not learn the correct and candid version of that historical narrative, for better or for worse? Are members and investigators not entitled to truthful accounting of its real origin in Mormonism? Ew, my mouth is gross. Don't look at that. Ugh. Give me a second. Jesus. Let me just get this down. Oh, Jesus. Chug water like when you were a kid. It's very freeing. Feels better. It tastes better too, I swear to God. Okay. So the question should not be whether it's faith promoting or not to share ugly but truthful facts. The question should be, is it the honest thing to do? The same fucked up guy, best friends with a murderer con man dude, Elder Dallin H. Oaks, made the following disturbing comment on the PBS documentary The Mormons. He said, "It is wrong to criticize the leaders of the church, even if the criticism is true." Weird. Researching unapproved materials on the internet. Elder Quentin L. Cook made the following comment in the October 2012 General Conference. Quote, "Some have immersed themselves in internet material that magnify, exaggerate, and in some cases invent shortcomings of early church leaders. Then they draw incorrect conclusions that can affect testimony. Any who have made these choices can repent and be spiritually renewed." Thanks, dude. President Dieter F. Uchtdorf said the following in his CES talk, What is This Truth? Quote, "Remember that in this day of information, there are many who create doubt about anything and everything at any time and every place. You will even find even those who still claim that they have evidence that the earth is flat, that the moon is hologram, it looks like it a little bit, and that certain movie stars are really aliens from another planet. And it is always good to keep in mind just because something is printed on paper, appears on the internet, is frequently repeated, or has frequently, I'm gonna skip that. Is frequently repeated or has powerful group of followers doesn't make it true." End quote. And I'm gonna take it back. I am gonna say, he says, is frequently repeated, just like how they tell the missionaries and people who don't have a testimony to repeat testimonies in again until you have one or feel it. Bitch, shut the fuck up. Okay, so why does it matter whether information was received from a stranger, television, book, magazine, comic book, napkin, and yes, the internet? They are all mediums or conduits of information. It's the information itself, its accuracy, and its relevance that matters. Elder Neil L. Anderson made the following statement in October 2014 General Conference, specifically targeting the medium of the internet in the bizarre attempt to discredit the internet as a reliable source for getting factual and truthful information. We might remind the sincere inquirer that internet information does not have a quote truth filter. Some information, no matter how convincing, is simply not true. Update. Ironically, the only way for members to directly read the church's admissions and validations of yesterday's anti-Mormon lies is by going onto the internet to the Gospel Topics Essays section of the church's website. The essays and their presence on LDS.org have disturbed and shocked many members, some to the point of even believing that the church website has been hacked. With all of this talk from general authorities against the internet and daring it to be balanced by looking at what both defenders and critics are saying about the church, it is as if questioning and researching and doubting is now the new pornography. Truth has no fear of the light. President George A. Smith says, if a faith will not bear to be investigated, if its preachers and professors are afraid to have it examined, their foundation must be very weak. A church that is afraid to let its people determine themselves, truth and falsehood in an open market, is a church that is insecure and afraid in its own truth claims. Under Elder Cook's counsel, Fair Mormon and unofficial LDS apologetic websites are anti-Mormon sources that should be avoided. Not only do they introduce the Mormons to, quote, internet materials that magnify, exaggerate, and in some cases invent shortcomings of early church leaders, but they provide asinine, quote, faithful answers to logical fallacies and omissions while leaving members confused and hanging with bizarre versions of Mormonism. What about the disturbing information about early church leaders in the church which are not magnified or exaggerated or invented? What about disturbing facts that didn't come from flat earthers or moon hologrammers, but instead from the church itself? Are those facts invalid when someone discovers them on the internet? And what happens when a member comes across the church's Book of Mormon translation essay where they learn for the first time in their lives that the Book of Mormon was not translated with gold plates as depicted in Sunday school, ensigns, missionary training centers, general conference addresses, or visitor centers, or the church's Race and the Priesthood essay, where yesterday's prophets and revelators are thrown under the bus and are now disavowed theories, or the translation and historicity of the Book of Abraham essay and the Book of Abraham and the pictures do not match what they were saying, or the plural marriages in Kirkland and Navajo essay where they learned the real regions of polygamy and the disturbing details of how Joseph practiced it, that Joseph was married to other living men's wives and young girls as young as 14 behind Emma's back. The God sent an angel with a drawn sword threatening Joseph, or any of the trouble essays for that matter. Is this member in need of repentance for discovering and being troubled by all the inconsistencies and deceptions? Do I need to repent for being fucking right? No. Why is the member required to repent for discovering verifiable facts and for coming to the same logical conclusion about the LDS's church dominant narrative that Mormon historian, scholar, and patriarch Richard Bushman did? The dominant native I'm tired. Most of the main information and facts that I discovered and confirmed online about the church is now from church verified is now from church sources, church-friendly sources, and neutral sources. And it's always good to keep in mind, just because something is printed on paper, blah, 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 blah. Going after members who publish or share their questions, concerns, or doubts. The Navajo 6. No, the September 6th, sorry. Excuse me. The September 6th were 6 members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints who were excommunicated or disfellowshipped by the church in September of 1993, allegedly for publishing scholarly work on Mormonism or critiquing church doctrine or leadership. A few months before the September 6th, Elder Boyd K. Packer made the following comment regarding the 3, quote, enemies of the church. He says, the dangers I speak of come from the gay, lesbian movement, the feminist movement, and the ever-present challenge from the so-called scholars or intellectuals. And that was Boyd K. Packer, May 18th, 1993. Strengthening the church's members community, SCMC. The spying and monitoring arm of the church is secretive, and most members have been unaware of its existence since its creation in 1985 after Ezra Taft Benson became president. Elder Jeffrey R. Holland admitted it still exists in March of 2012. The historical evidence in the September 6th points to the SCMC's primary mission being to hunt and expose intellectuals and or disaffected members who are influencing other members to think and question, despite Elder Holland's claim that it's a committee primarily to fight against polygamy. Okay. When the prophet speaks, the debate is over. N. Eldon Tanner, first counselor to the first presidency, gave the first presidency message in August 1979 Ensign that includes the following statement, quote, when the prophet speaks, the debate is over, end quote. Some things that are not useful, some things that are true are not useful, plus censorship, plus deceptively altering past quotes, plus prioritizing tithing before food and water, plus it is wrong to criticize leaders of the church even if the criticism is true, plus spying and monitoring on members, plus intellectuals are dangerous, plus us versus them rhetoric, plus when the prophet speaks, the debate is over, plus obedience is the first law of heaven, equals policies and practices you'd expect to find in a totalitarian system such as North Korea or George Orwell's 1984, not from the gospel of Jesus Christ. Who, if you do look into it, like, I'm not saying that Jesus Christ is, like, not a real person, but bitch, he was fucking black. He was dark. He was a homeless guy who probably smelled, hung around unsavory people that even today you wouldn't go down and hang out with, you know, and Arab, just, and you can look up the pictures of Jesus Christ, Mormon. He's just a white guy, you know, and just chill out, dude. Okay, but continuing on. As a believing member, I was deeply offended by the accusation that the church was a cult. How can it be a cult when we're good people who are following Christ, focusing on family, and doing good works in and out of a church that bears his name? When we have 15 million members? What a ridiculous accusation. That's my mom. It was only after seeing all that the problems with the church's foundational truth claims and discovering for the first time that SCMC, the monitoring system for the members, and the anti-intellectualism going on behind the scenes, that I could clearly see the above cultish aspects of the truth, and why people came to the conclusion that Mormonism is a cult. Conclusion. This is a quote from President Joseph Fielding Smith. Mormonism, as it is called, must stand or fall on the story of Joseph Smith. He was either a prophet of God, divinely called, properly appointed and commissioned, or he was one of the biggest frauds this world has ever seen. There is no middle ground. And you can watch just the first video of this and not watch the rest of it. But if you know that little part of truth that you heard in the first video or whatever, and then you keep going back to church, you keep paying them money, you keep spending your time and energy, you put your children there, you're as bad as all these people. And it's stupid, as I can't even explain. There is no middle ground. If Joseph was a deceiver who willfully attempted to mislead people, then he should be exposed. His claims should be refuted and his doctrines shown to be false. And I'm going to read this poem because it's fitting. As a child, it seemed so simple. Every step was clearly marked. Priesthood, mission, sweetheart temple, bright with hope I soon embarked. But now I have become a man, and doubt is the promise of the plan. For the path is growing steeper, and a slip could mean my death. Plunging upward ever deeper, I can barely catch my breath. Oh, where within this untamed wild is the star that led me as a child? As I crest the shadowed mountain, I embrace the endless sky. The expanse of heaven's fountain now unfolds before my eye. 1,000 stars shine on the land, the chart drafted by my own hand. And I'm sorry that you guys had to... No, I'm not going to apologize for anything, actually. So, link in the comments. You can find... It's called the CES letter. CES letter. All of the versions are free on the website. You can get PDF. You can get it in Spanish. You can get it in the simplified version if you have a hard time reading on computers and stuff. All of the sources, all of that is on there. go have fun doing all that. I'm going to bed. It's like 3 in the morning, but you know, when something needs to get done, and it needs to get done like now, and I think that this was one of those things. So what was that, like part 6? Oh my god. Okay, good night, bye.